Hi, everyone. Thanks for dialing into the webinar. I still see some participants trying to dial in, so let's just give them a couple minutes, and we can start the ball rolling on the webinar. So, dear participants, thanks for joining again. My name is Ling, and I'm the Director of Communications at ARE. So, welcome to the Innovation for Electrification Showcase webinar. It's organized by ARE, so the Alliance for Rural Electrification. And we created this showcase series to bring our members a step closer to potential collaborators. And this gives them the opportunity to directly showcase their products and solutions. So with that, I'm happy to kick off the first edition of the 2025 I4E webinar series on productive use of renewable energy and community engagement. So the topic is actually part of a larger campaign that we launched in February. So you may have noticed that we launched a newsletter on the same theme yesterday. And we have ARE members providing contributions there. So feel free to check that out as well. And for the purposes of this part of the campaign, I'll just quickly run through the agenda and what we'll be talking about. So yeah, as a refresher, we're going to be talking about Pure. So what is Pure? It's the productive use of renewable energy, and basically that refers to the application of renewable energy sources, whether that's solar, wind, hydro, or biomass, to generate income, improve livelihoods, and enhance economic activities. Basically, it goes beyond basic electricity access for lighting or households, and it really focuses on activities that drive economic growth and social development. So yeah, so this will be the webinar for today. And ARE is, well, at least our members are at the forefront of what we call the Pure Revolution. They advance innovative solutions worldwide. And this webinar will showcase examples of pure and community engagement from our members. We have 6 members here today, which my colleague will introduce to later on. And they have projects and solutions on various topics that will be covered. So we've got Asantys here with us today, and they'll be explaining to us what are solar-powered mobility hubs. We've got Entric here with us as well, and they'll be talking about how they integrate energy transition utility. We've got KAMIM technologies, they've got solar cooling hubs and agriculture. We've got Mobility for Africa, and they'll be explaining to us how women are in the driving seat today. We've also got On.Capital. They focus on pure investments, so they'll be explaining to us what the returns are. And last but not least, we have Smart Energy, and they'll be talking about empowering local communities. So please note that the session will be recorded. The recording will be made available on the ARE website. So in case you have any questions, feel free to drop the question in the chat, and also with the name of the speaker that is addressed to. So with that, and also for the benefit for those who don't know us about ARE, who is ARE? So it's the Alliance for Rural Electrification. We're a global business association, and we represent 200 members along the distributed renewable energy value chain. We work to expand sustainable electricity access, create jobs, and respond to climate change on 3 continents, Africa, Asia, and Latin America. This is a map showcasing where our members work. I mean, as you can see, a large part of our work, our members work on is in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. We are technology agnostic, so that means that our members work on bioenergy, they work on hydro, they work on wind, power components, energy storage, and solar PV. As long as it's clean, renewable energy, they can be, they are part of our membership. And we are also systems agnostic. So our members work on grid connected, but also standalone and mini grids. And yeah, that would be my last slide for today. This is sort of like a slide that sort of summarizes the membership services that we offer to our members. In summary, that is business and market development. We also run capacity building activities, policy and advocacy, and last but not least, communications and marketing. So in case any of you would like to join the ARE family, feel free to reach out to us after the webinar. And with that, I'd like to pass the floor over to my colleague Carlos, who's going to be facilitating the rest of the webinar. Enjoy. Goodbye.
Thank you very much, Deng, for your kind introduction. And hello, everyone joining from all over the world. And welcome to this new edition of the I4E showcase series of ARE. My name is Carlos. I'm Business Development Assistant at ARE. And today I will have the pleasure of facilitating this webinar from this point onwards. So today we have the pleasure of having with us 6 speakers from the ARE community, 6 experts on this topic of productive uses of renewable energy, what we call PURE, and community engagement. And I hope it will be really insightful for all of you. Before we start, just a couple of remarks. First of all, for the speakers, dear speakers, you will have 8 minutes for doing your presentation. So please try to comply as much as possible with this timing so we can have enough time at the end for doing the Q&A session. Also for the audience, dear audience, please, we invite you to make use of the question and answer function of GoToWebinar. You will find this tool on the right. You will have the chance of sending us your questions for the speakers. Please make sure you point out to which speaker are you addressing the question, and we will redistribute the questions during the Q&A session at the end. So thank you very much. Having said that, we can move to the first speaker of the day, who is Mr. Mhanna, representing AsantysSystems. So Jad, can I invite you to turn on your camera to begin your presentation? Thank you. The floor is all yours.
Thanks, Carlos. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Today I will be presenting about productive use of renewable energy, PURE, with a focus on solar-powered mobility hubs and charging stations in off-grid areas. Next slide, please. Yeah. To start with, Asantys is a German-based solar system company integrator and EPC, specializing in designing and delivering solar system worldwide with the help of our in-house logistics team. And here, as shown on the map, our focus is mainly Africa, driven by our managing director's strong connection to the region. We see ourselves as the missing puzzle piece that connects developers, financiers, and operators. And with this vision, we operate as a social entrepreneur, striving not only commercially, but also providing clean, secure, and affordable energy to drive the whole renewable energy revolution. The company was founded in 2009. The projects have ranged from solar home systems to pumping and telecom projects. And over time, we shifted to mini-grid approach to electrify villages and on a larger scale. This experience gained since then has enabled us to explore many research and development initiatives, and like as mini-grids, part of those ones, and they are usually oversized to accommodate villages' growth, and excess energy sometimes goes unused. And to address this challenge, we have been exploring productive use services and solutions that optimize energy utilization and enhance the rural overall efficiency and many of mini-grids. Next slide, please. As a solar power provider, we collaborate with local operators and specialized NGOs to integrate the productive use appliances into mini grids under the pure hub approach, which can also be containerized solutions. The seamless integration of Pure into our systems enhances the business case of developers and operators and improve profitability by incorporating day loads and anchor loads. It also reduces CO2 emissions and minimizes environmental impact. And last but not least, it contributes to the economic development and local health and living conditions. To ensure optimal operations, load management is utilized by integrating smart meters, which allows the operators to control and prioritize energy distribution based on solar fluctuation during the day. Next slide, please. To delve more into the solutions that we offer within Asantys, we can start by the agriculture, which involves the crop and livestock processing, and this improves the productivity and also main reason to reduce the harvest loss and improves the shelf life of the product. Machineries include, for example, workshop tools. As we all know, productive use of renewable energy is any activity that you do to become productive while using electricity, and under the renewable energy umbrella, we are talking in our case about solar energy. And overall, this helps productivity. Next, we can offer also e-mobility solutions that involves either vehicles that are electric, different vehicle types we're going to see later during the slides, but also charging stations, which is our highlight of this presentation. All of this improves the means of transportation and expand the market reach in rural and off-grid areas. Next, we also offer cold storage, which is the not my next slide. The cold storage, which is to help preserving the food and reducing the losses, which also improves the cold chain. Last but not least, last solution, we all know pumping has been made for several years now, but what's make it innovative for our case is the water treatment and purification, which adds accessibility to clean water and improve health over water. Next slide, please. Digitalization is part of the one that that connects all of this. As I said, it helps control and integrate all of this. It helps the developer and the operators to know what's available and how you can intelligently control all of your loads and enhance the system overall. To delve more into the applications of Pure, where we see this fits, first of all, like as in communities, which are mini grids in a sense, which helps access to the energy. It creates jobs and develops the community and business there overall. As community engagement, cooperatives is also one of the applications which gather all farmers, for example, or any actor to unite and have more access by developing their business. It depends on different solutions that they have. And last but not least, it's in the commercial and industrial era, where it's mainly used to not rely on, for example, grid when it's weak, but also reduce electricity costs. And then often there is the use of diesel generators. And the fuel prices are increasing and fluctuating. This is where you can be reliable and more secure. Next slide, please. Just to brief about our main Pure solutions, cooling and water hubs. To begin with the cooling, they can be either thermal or without thermal storage. They can be blast freezing, chilling. It can be ice flakes, either in containerized solution. For the different applications, for example, you can do for fruits, for vegetables. That depends on the needs of the client, the customer. And of course, it's solar powered. Also for the water purification, it involves reverse osmosis if you have brackish or seawater, ultrafiltration, is needed to make it potable. And if you're thinking about storing the water, this is where you need UV protection. You can make it as a business case with water dispensers. And to make it more WHO standards, this is where you add chlorine. These solutions are powered by solar energy. They are modular and customizable, and of course can be linked and controlled over the monitoring online. Next slide, please. Our highlight is the e-mobility hubs. As we can see, different vehicles that goes from cycles, motorbikes, three-wheelers, even boats, but tractors as well for the villages and areas. Solutions can go from last mile distribution to taxis to ambulance, and all of that will be charged by solar, very customizable depending on the needs. Again, you can have it as a repair station, you can have it swappable batteries, and also it helps reducing the charging time with this swappable batteries, and also repair shop for it when you can have it. All of them are customizable. You can have them as a containerized solution or just AC or DC loads. Next slide, please. A few project references that have been made here in 2018 in Tanzania for the Serengeti National Park. Land cruiser were converted to electrical. They are charged with solar power in the main station. And here the main reason was to reduce noise and for the whole national park. The highlight here is to also highlight about having these e-boats. The last project we had recently in 2024 in collaboration with the CDW Foundation. It's in the Casamance area with the river. Two boats were made electrical, solar rooftop charged, but also you can charge them in a station on the shore, AC loads. This to reduce the noise reduction as well, and then to not be relying on fuel anymore. As I said, solar rooftop, but also can be charged on the port. 25 kilowatt motor. This is briefly about them. Two EP rogues, and then each one is with 36 kilowatt hour battery capacity. This is the highlight. Please feel free to reach out if you want to know more information. Yeah, happy to contribute if you have any question and projects on mind. Thank you so much, and this was it. Please, if you want to get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Jad, for this really interesting presentation. It's always great to know what Asantys is working on, especially so we're connected to productive uses. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I would like to invite the audience to share as many questions as they want. I'm pretty sure they will have about this presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Carlos.
Now we will move to the next speaker of the day, who is Mr. Dan Kemabonta, who is the CEO of EntricPower Systems Limited of Nigeria. Hi, Dan. The floor is all yours for the next 8 minutes. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot. So today I'm talking a little bit about making a case for a fully integrated energy transition utility. And as we would see, a lot of what I'll be talking about will largely be on the business model innovation as energy access companies address the problem of energy poverty, largely in sub-Saharan Africa. I am the CEO of Entric. We are an energy access company based in Nigeria, where we serve a couple of communities, building out mini grids, SHS systems, and hopefully integrating to become what we are calling energy transition utility. So many of us are familiar with the energy access challenge, right? Currently, we have different companies that provide different solutions, largely with different energy assets configurations. We have the CNI providers, we do have the SHS system providers, and we do have the mini grid providers. But so far so good, this trend has had some problems or some issues. We are seeing projects that don't perform, especially in the mini grid space. We're hearing about some projects being abandoned because they're not able to properly cover their cost of operations, even some cases their capital cost. We're seeing a lot of companies being susceptible to macroeconomic risk, especially if you were, financing any project in Nigeria in the last 5 years, that would have been a major problem for you. We're seeing desperate performances across all energy configurations and low liquidity. And what we know is that you need liquidity if you want to scale. So how do we address this problem? Next slide. So we are thinking about what a problem to the solution could be, and we here to present the energy transition utility. This is currently in development, but also excited to talk about it with anybody within the space. So what is it essentially? It's essentially a unified entity that integrates both off-grid and grid-connected solutions. And a core aspect of this business model is that you're easily able to take communities from the solar home systems business model up until a grid connection with the same entity, adapting energy services to the customers. So essentially providing what we call a bundled energy services to these communities. Next slide. So this is a graphical representation of what we mean by bundled energy services, where the same entity provides, community mini grids, CNI, solar home systems, and utility sub-franchising. And we're seeing examples of these happen very recently. For example, the mergers and acquisitions of Engie Energy Access by Ignite. So essentially, we think that this is the kind of model that basically could help address some of the issues that we'll be having thus far. Next slide. So how would this ETU work, and how would it be financed? At Entric, we've been developing what we call the bundled energy-backed securities, and this is kind of the unique solution that we have been thinking about as a way to easily finance projects and easily scale. So how does all this work? So for example, an energy access company will build out multiple portfolios of projects. They would work with investment professionals to securitize those projects within a special purpose vehicle, and the projects or the securities of the projects will be sold to investors. That way, energy developers get capital upfront to be able to roll over and build more projects. We think that this is one way by which we can easily improve liquidity across the sector, and also take the sector as what we call an infrastructural play. So for example, looking at ways to reduce our risk through diversifying assets and also diversifying geographies or projects in geographies, and also maximizing economies of scale. So next slide. So how does this work for Pure, which we're here to talk about a lot? So take the example of an ETU building out a portfolio of 20, for example, solar power telecom projects. So they take those projects, they bundle it together, they work with the investment professionals if they don't have that skill in-house to create these SPVs, special purpose vehicles, and then securitize the SPVs. And the investment professionals would issue the SPVs. So investors would buy those SPVs and pay, I don't know, a couple of cents on the dollar, or if the project is very valuable, even more than that on the dollar, for rights to the cash flow of those assets over time. The investors pay this cash to those who provided financing for the project initially, and those guys can provide the money back or the capital back to the ETU to develop more projects. The SPV would pay like an O&M fee for continuous operations to the ETU, while the cash flows of the projects will continually go into the investors over a period of time. We think that is a way by which energy access companies have quick access to capital that they can roll over and build more projects, instead of just having capital tied up in projects and waiting to recoup that cost over time. They can get the quick cash now and they can build more projects and scale very quickly. Next slide. So as we think about where financing and resources are going towards, it will be very important to think of what are the right business models this resources should go to. Fortunately, the energy access industry has been around for about a decade and a half, and we have experiences about what works and what doesn't work. And we think that business models like what we're proposing are sort of the right models, at least so far, to think about how to address this problem and allocate resources more efficiently. Next slide. So what is the way forward and what is the call to action? So number one, I think we do need financial advisors who are able to make markets for the BEVs, the bundled energy backed securities, perform due diligence on the SPVs, because a lot of these projects will be fairly in disparate locations. So you can have projects in either in different communities in different countries or different communities within the same country. Investors need to perform due diligence and need to advise on M&As. We need investors who are willing to take that initial risk to buy some of these SPVs. Policymakers who are thinking about what are the necessary regulatory frameworks to support this kind of business model. And as usual, we need energy access companies to think about the bundled energy access model and expand through M&A opportunities and integrate to become energy transition utilities. And we're seeing that happen currently, but we need more examples of that as the space becomes much more of a matured market. The future of energy access is integrated, sustainable, and transformational. It's important that we do make it a reality. Next slide. I'm very happy to chat with anybody about some of the things we've talked about today, especially the BEVs, and to see how different stakeholders are happy to get involved. My email is here. Please do reach out and let's set up a conversation and talk about this. With that, I will be excited to take any questions at the end of this presentation. Over to you, Carlos.
Thanks a lot, Dan, for guiding us through the energy transition utility. It's been really, really interesting also to see the productive uses, the productive energy services solutions that are available with this initiative that you mentioned. I would like to remember the audience to ask the questions using the Q&A function. I'm pretty sure this presentation will receive a lot of engagement with the audience. And now we will go through the third presentation of the day, also representing a Nigerian member of ARE, KAMIM Technologies. We have with us Adekoyejo Kuye, who is actually the managing director of KAMIM. Adekoyejo, may I invite you to turn on your camera? Nice. Thank you, Adekoyejo. The floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me, Carlos?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Once again, my name is Adekoyejo Kuye. I'm the managing director at KAMIM Technologies. And KAMIM is, we're an EPC company that is based in Lagos, Nigeria. And I'm really excited to share insights on how our solar cooling hubs at KAMIM are transforming rural agriculture, empowering communities, and also tackling post-harvest losses. I think we all know that food security is a pressing issue, and smallholder farmers are at the heart of the solution, given that they have the right tools and infrastructures to be more productive. So let's dive in. Next slide. So this is a quick overview of my talking points. We'll be looking at background and scope of problems. We'll look at 2 case studies, how some of our solutions are solving these problems we've talked about. And we'll look at challenges, lessons learned so far, and we'll conclude. Next slide. So to provide a bit of context, let's look at the crucial, let me talk about the crucial stages in the food network, starting from production to storage to handling. They're usually like the most critical points when it comes to preventing food losses on the food value chain. And this is where we think technology, sustainable energy, and sustainable infrastructures can play their parts. Without reliable infrastructure for cooling or for even processing at the farm gates, farmers are often at the race against time and temperature. So to ensure that product reaches the consumer before it goes to waste. And this doesn't just affect the farmers. Once we get it wrong at the first mile, it affects the entire food chain. And it impacts food network, it affects food availability, market stability, and ultimately the economic growth. So if you're looking at the first stage of the food chain network, like I said earlier, or the first few stages, this is where energy access and infrastructure can play the most part. If you look at the first problem here, the lack of infrastructure is one of the major limitations we have at the stages. We lack critical equipment, so due to the lack of energy to power, maybe irrigation system and even cooling systems. For example, at the post-harvest stage, there is what we call pre-cooling, right? Pre-cooling is the rapid removal of heat from freshly harvested produce. And this process is typically done before the product is even put into cold storage or is being transported. So you need energy, we need infrastructure at this stage, and it's not just there, especially in emerging societies or the global south. Cold storage is one of the most demanded equipment for productive use on the continent based on numerous reports we've seen. And this obviously leads to the second problem here, post-harvest losses. In Nigeria, for example, about $9 billion is lost annually due to post-harvest losses, according to the FAO. And this leads to poverty, and the third problem here. About 63% of the world's poor people are engaged in farming. And this is very ironic because these are the people that are literally feeding the world. Also, the last issue here, small-scale producers do not have access to financing, and they are highly vulnerable to climate change impacts. They receive less than 3% of the global finance and climate finance, which would enable them to mitigate and adapt. This is according to the IFAD. So these are some of the problems we face in the sector. Next slide. So on the next slide, we'll be seeing how we are solving this problem with our cooling hubs. The first case study here is the Cool Cycle project. And this infrastructure was designed and developed by KAMIM Technologies. And it involves two commercial cold rooms, a 7-ton and a 5-ton cold room, and also a 20-feet temperature-controlled pack house. And this is powered by off-grid solar. It was launched in June of 2024, and we've achieved some incredible results. First is reduction in post-harvest losses. We've been able to reduce post-harvest losses by 60%. We've preserved about 50 tons of produce weekly. We've generated almost 900 kilowatt hours of solar power, and it's even empowering phone charging stations to the community. So there's also the added value. We've been able to increase the income of farmers by more than 40% by ensuring better preservation and also connect them to market as well. We've created jobs as well, 16 temporary jobs in the deployment phase. We have 6 permanent staff, and also part-time workers when we need people for pre-sorting and sorting of produce. So all this is happening off-grid, powered by clean energy. It's proof that these solutions can prevent food waste, but there are also benefits beyond cooling, right? There is, as we've seen, there's job creation, especially for women and youth. There is, it supports climate resilience through clean energy adoption, and there's also sustainable solution, and it shows that sustainable solutions can indeed work in rural communities. And next slide, we'll look at another case study, Eco Farm Link. The next, yeah. So this is another exciting initiative. This project was co-developed by KAMIM and other consortium members, as you're seeing on the screen. And the system is not just providing cooling, we are integrating an AI-powered market intelligence with solar-powered cold storage. So we're not just providing cooling, we're providing market linkage through advanced technologies. And this solution will serve up to 500 small-scale farmers when we launch in the next few days. And we've completed this project last month, and it will be able to drive market expansion and also financial sustainability and stability for farmers in the region as well. And all this is also powered by off-grid solar. This, for instance, is powered by 10 kilowatt peak solar. We have 20 kilowatt of lithium battery storage, and we have very highly efficient compressors that are powering our cold rooms. Next slide. So looking at challenges and lessons, of course, projects like this will come with the challenges. First is the major one here, which is on financing. There's always this high upfront cost. Solar cooling hubs require investment, and while in the long run, if you have sustainable business models, they will pay off, but the initial financing is always a barrier. So this is why we need the risking mechanisms and also innovative financing models to finance such products. And also there is a need for awareness and training. So many of the farmers at first don't fully understand how to optimize cold storage solution. So there is need for proper market research and also community engagement. Is very essential for like developing really tailored solutions and also ensuring that the product is adopted. And finally, we need to ensure like long-term sustainability. Many projects fail because they rely heavily on grants, especially in this part of the world. So we need to develop scalable business models and also strong partnerships to keep the solutions running. Next slide. So how do we go from here? The first thing is that we need to invest in small scale producers. They are the backbone of, looking at Africa, they are the backbone of Africa's food systems, and they need the right infrastructure to succeed. Secondly, we need to prioritize physical infrastructure. A lot of agri-tech solutions focus on software, but you cannot leapfrog this process. We need the physical hardware, and that is what they will rely on. So we need to focus on developing this kind of physical infrastructures. So, thirdly, we need to shift from aid to sustainable investment. You can see the current geopolitical landscape. So grants alone won't solve these problems. We need business models that drive long-term impact. And finally, we need partnerships. Collaboration is very key. Governments, investors, development partners, they must work together to scale this kind of solutions. The last slide, please. Yeah, so I think that's it from my end. Thank you for your attention. If there is something that interests you about the work we do and you'd like to collaborate, support, or learn more, you feel free to reach out through any of those channels, and let's build a future where of sustainable agriculture together. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation, Adekoyejo. Also impeccable timing. Thanks a lot for that. Really interesting presentation. We invite you again, the audience, to share your questions in the Q&A function of GoToWebinar for all the questions of Adekoyejo's presentation. Now it's time for the fourth speaker of the day, who is Ms. Shantha Bloemen, the CEO of Mobility for Africa, who I'm sure will give a really interesting presentation also about productive uses, now more focused on e-mobility. Hi, Shantha, great to see you.
Good to see you. Okay,
Thanks,
next slide. I think I'm giving you a vision of the world from the bottom up. Basically, Mobility for Africa was launched in Zimbabwe in 2019. We're incorporated in Mauritius with ambitions to scale and replicate across the continent. We're a technology solutions company that provides mobile energy for mobility and agriculture. That's our new frontier, with the aim to serve small-scale farmers, but especially women who bear the brunt of the impact of no transport in rural areas. So I'll go to the next slide. I mean, it's really exciting to hear about what's going on from other perspectives. We've been basically designing from the bottom. So we set up our first pilot charging station in 2019. And we had an ambition to, we took off the shelf from China, the tricycle, but the ambition was to adapt the technology to be fit for purpose. And we essentially entered the space to solve the mobility crisis. And then we moved to realize that in rural areas we have a huge deficit of energy, and we had to solve both problems. So it's been a 5-year, 6-year journey, but I'm happy to say that I think now we're very proud of the technology that we've built, along with the skills that are needed to service and maintain the technology. And we also put a lot of focus on the business model and how do we make this viable. I think what's been said, proving, especially in rural areas, that people have the financing is critical. Yet the irony is they are the people that produce the food and have a critical role to play in agriculture, where most countries depend on agribusiness and agriculture for the livelihoods of 70 to 80% of their population. So it's a critical part of the economy. It's often not well understood because it's obviously in the informal economy. Next slide. So I won't go into the technology today. I focused on the community user case, and so just to say, as we've been focused on the tricycle, but we've also been focused on the batteries. So we've designed our own battery along with the charging system. I would say that what I didn't understand about batteries is that they are very complicated machines, and if you're going to bring them into rural areas and expect them to operate, then you need we've developed our own bespoke battery locally, and we went through a very long journey, which we continue to do to make sure we're leveraging the best technology globally. And we've also moved to make the tricycle IoT smart. The reality of rural is that data and connectivity is a huge challenge in Zimbabwe particularly. So we've had to experiment with different systems of data collection, but we've also created a digital data system to be able to collect and manage the energy produced. And our charging stations operate on both grid and off-grid. And we've then designed the batteries to be integrated for storage as well. And we've specifically wanted a long-lasting battery that could serve a first life in the tricycle and then a second life for other productive use tools. And we're in the process of introducing shared tools. So the idea is not a pay-as-you-go and ownership model, both with our mobility and our tricycles. The idea is you're servicing the community at large. And that makes a lot more financial sense, because when you look, for example, at transport, people are spending 20 to 30% of their income on transport, and that often doesn't even include the opportunity lost. So the beauty is that rather than just having the richest individual be able to afford the tricycle or the power tool, the idea is you're sharing it, and the mobility becomes the enabler for people to share tools productively and get them right to their fields where they need them most. Next slide. Who are our customers? And I'm going to just quickly spend the rest of my time, sorry, next slide, on this section. No, before I do, I'll just show you that I think you know, we've got huge amounts of stuff coming into the continent, and we can build beautiful technology and design it far away. But the reality is Africa's been suffering from too much stuff for a long time without the ecosystem to support it. So the transition to green economy needs to have the skills, and it needs to have the skills from the bottom up. It's not just engineers, but the low skilled workers. So we've invested 5 years in building the right operating procedures, manuals. Last year, we launched a semi-skilled workers course with the local vocational training school, and the plan is that that can be then replicated and give young people certified skills in batteries, assembly, and understanding energy, which is very complicated, and a lot of people leave school without any education in these sectors. So this is a critical part of us putting these skills where we operate to make sure that we've got a long-term sustainability to our model. Next slide. I'll just focus quickly on our customer. Sorry. I mean, we're basically, we go into a community. We choose our communities linked to agribusiness. So we've been focusing on the dairy sector. We're looking at sorghum. We're looking at Zimbabwe is a very agriculturally productive country, and we have a lot of farmers on contract. So we choose our communities, and we work then with the community to set up a charging station. And we obviously select our drivers who are going to be committed to either using that transport for shared reasons, for shared logistics, or who have a business that really depends on that transport. So it's not concentrated in just a few households. And for us, obviously, investing in the charging station means those batteries need to be stocked. So it's a mini grid, but we're not putting connections in. Our connection is mobile energy. Our batteries are 5 kVA, so they can do a lot. Next slide. We've got about 300 tricycles, but we are very eager to scale, and since we now have the technology. Why do we focus on women? Because I think obviously anyone who spent time in this part of the world, I've lost a few slides, will know that women are critical. And what I'd like to focus on is just to say that what we've seen is our women it has a major impact in the household, because with transport they can produce more, they can sell more, there is less domestic violence often because they don't have to nag their husbands. And what we've seen, and we've measured this, is over the time, it may take more time to sign up women and to train them, but what we know is after that we see their husbands actually appreciating that they are now in a stronger economic position to contribute to the family. So I'll end to say the good news is we're ready for scale, we're ready to expand. We're looking at different types of ways we can expand to other parts of the continent. Obviously financing is critical. We've done a lease to purchase for the women to buy the tricycle, and then they pay for the battery swapping, and the demand is huge. Obviously microfinance is very, very difficult in this part of the world, so we've just signed an agreement with a bank, which has taken a long time because, as we all know, in Africa, banks are very conservative and microfinance is usually very expensive and difficult as well. So we're hoping that the women can eventually own the tricycle, our customers, and then of course we're committed to them and they're committed to us for the long term through the charging swapping station. And as I said, we'll be complementing it so they can have access to power tools, mechanized tools, and the batteries can also be used for household consumption. But as we know, just to end, the focus of productive use energy means beyond the television and the fridge. Most rural people don't need a fridge, and if there is a television, it's the man that watches the TV and the woman that has to get up and still fetch the water. So I've got a strong bias to what productive use means. So thank you, and happy to share more.
Great. Thank you very much, Shantha, for showcasing all the valuable work that Mobility for Africa is doing in Zimbabwe. It's a really interesting presentation. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now we have 2 more presentations remaining, so we can move to the next speaker. Hi, Emmanuel. I can see you now. Yeah, Emmanuel is the president of On.Capital, another member of I4E, who will be talking about the projects of productive uses today. So thank you very much, Emmanuel, for being here, and the floor is yours for the next 8 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me fine? Carlos, I hope you hear me well.
Yes.
And without further ado, I suggest we go into the first slide. So here, 2 quick pictures I wanted to comment on. On the left side, it's where I personally started my career in Senegal in 2005 all the way to 2009, setting up solar systems for productive usages, from cold storage to water irrigation to telecommunication centers. Back then there still was cyber cafes, GSM antennas, sewing machines, and so on. So really I started in Senegal by piloting many different usages of energy. And on the right side, it's a painting called The Fairy Electricity, a painting from a French painter called Raoul Dufy. And the fairy electricity was actually basically about showing how much electricity can do and how much we don't know yet how much electricity can do. So without further ado, we'll go into 15 years of investing in productive usages of renewable energy and sharing some of the stories about the returns that we have achieved as an investor, mostly through equity or quasi-equity investments rather than debt. So let's go to the next slide, kindly. Here, very briefly, our mission at On.Capital, which was set up about 4 years ago, is to do advisory. We also do fundraising and investments. Before that, myself, I co-founded Energy Access Ventures, which was a 75 million euro fund set up in 2015. And beforehand as well, I was working with Schneider Electric in 2012 to invest their Schneider Electric Energy Access Fund. So I'll cover basically about 13 to 15 years of investments in the space and what we can take out in terms of returns. Feel free to reach out if you want to know more about what we do now with On.Capital. So going to the next slide. Here, just wanted to show how we've been thinking about this market. We believe that this market is basically, just about to boom, and if you go back to the next slide, sorry, yeah, pure positioning. If you look at a decade or 20-year time frame, you can then really see the de-risking that can happen, the economies of scale, the consolidation, and the maturity of a market segment. We started with basically mostly household needs, because in 2005 you had like solar home systems or standalone systems that could power CFL light bulbs, charge a few things with a cigarette type plug, and people were already starting to use it so that they could have more economic activities at night, so that they could power a radio station, so that they could power a few more income generating services. But basically from the get-go, we realized that there was a massive need for more energy to actually power a certain number of activities in rural areas, be it from grain milling to cooling food, or cooling meat, or cooling milk. So we immediately looked at, let's say, servicing or serving the residential with energy as a service model, which could then apply, hopefully, to more productive users, such as factories and so on. It didn't really become true immediately. It took some time, and we only started really investing in bigger productive usages apart from solar home systems from 2015. So we invested in sun culture, solar powered irrigation, we invested in Solarize Africa, we invested in Manocap Energy, invested in SolarX, and as well Candy Solar, which were all different business models looking at how to bring solar, how to bring energy as a service faster, as a one-stop shop for productive users. And then if you really think of like how many opportunities Pure represents, I put this quote out there, which is about what Faraday apparently said when he was asked about what's the use of electricity, and the answer was, what's the use of a baby? So in reality, if you look at any economy that's gone through rural electrification, it took them about 50 years to bring electricity as far as one could in all the productive activities of one's life. If you look at farms in the US, basically it took a special bureau to go and measure what movements people were making and how to replace those mechanical movements and human energy with electricity to then finance equipments and their design and deploy them. So it's really about anticipating, pioneering, and then pivoting when one can, but also scaling up. So here we showed a few exits throughout the years. Lumos was a solar home system, but the bigger one back then, working with the telecom operators in Nigeria and Guinea to really be able to power, let's say, barber shops, clinics, and so on. We invested in Phoenix International, which was really about enabling small-scale local telecom shop owners and phone charging businesses. We looked at, of course, Sunfunder, which has invested in a number of productive usage type companies. We looked at PEG, which has gone into various productive usages, but rather small scale and Pico style. Pego Energy was more about the cooking, and then Candy and Sun Culture maybe more, let's say, pure commercial type plays. But over 15 years, we've been able to generate several exits, and I'm about to say a bit more about those. So if we can go to the next slide. We really think of the energy access market as a very big and deep iceberg. Commercial and industrial energy are maybe the emerged tips of it, and we're talking about like buildings. So we'll look at how much energy efficiency also is about to rise. And basically residential energy and commercial energy have already taken, let's say, most of the investments to date. They've delivered some proof points to be it entrepreneurs, customers, and investors, but we believe there's an underwater and sort of under the radar massive market that's about to become a market one can seize. It's deemed to be over $50 billion per year, and we're talking about mobility, as several people discussed, but also connectivity, be it from telecom towers to data centers. Water and agriculture remain big, and efficiency throughout different productive activities is going to be a core driver. So we stopped thinking really about off-grid and on-grid. What we've seen is really a convergence towards the grid edge. So there's more and more activities that are electrified. There's more and more pico energy that's decentralized and remotely managed. And all of this is sort of monitored and remotely managed thanks to digitization. So the digitalization or digitization of assets is a core component of the market segments we see opening. And overall, people don't really care about buying electricity. They care about the productive benefits of what electricity allows them to do. And so for us, in terms of pricing, it's really a unique opportunity. We're no longer looking at a shrinking market on the off-grid, but we're rather looking at the grid edge as a big booming market. So going to the next slides real quick, I think just showing here some of the different productive usages we've invested in and divested from. You can see that we have actually really covered as many productive usages we saw as investable, and we're still looking at new verticals emerging. And then in terms of actual returns, I'll go maybe to the next slide if possible before wrapping up. Basically, we've already seen that we could achieve exits at a good multiple. It takes time. It's important to go very early and transform those businesses to make sure they can be profitable. But going down the road, out of 25 investments, going to the next slide kindly, we've already demonstrated that we could we had sold about over nine positions with very decent multiples and IRR. So we can't share everything, but we just wanted to share a snapshot of the exits we've been able to generate, because it's important to show that over a decade those returns can be materialized. So maybe to wrap up, we can go over the last few slides and then open the session. We're currently raising a new fund called the Energy Go-Getters Fund, and we are busy working towards a close for $100 million to invest more equity and quasi-equity in more productive usage of energy in the coming year. And we look forward to answering any questions you may have. So maybe we can go to the final slides, and then happy to go back to any questions. But thanks a lot, Ari, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Emmanuel. A really interesting presentation as well. Thank you for guiding us through the portfolio, impressive portfolio of On.Capital working in the dairy sector. As mentioned, please, we invite the audience to make use of the GoToWebinar function or Q&A. As Emmanuel mentioned, please feel free to share as many questions as you want related to his presentation and also to the previous presentation of the other speakers before. Now we will move to the final presentation of the day. We can go to the next slide. Hi, Aashrita.
Hi, good day, everybody.
Nice, thank you very much, Aashrita. Aashrita is the marketing coordinator of the AR member Smart Energy, and she will do the last presentation of the day. So thank you very much, and look forward to the presentation.
Hi, good day, everybody. So my name is Aashrita Mohess, and as discussed, I am the marketing coordinator for Smart Energy. And I'd like to discuss how we empower local communities. So who are we? Smart Energy is a major contributor to the energy transition by building turnkey power plants that integrate renewables and storage. We were founded in 2017, so a relatively now startup company, and we have become the leading force across the entire value chain from design to construction. We also provide capacity building and O&M support. Next slide, please. Our mission at Smart Energy is to provide stable, affordable, and clean energy to developing regions. We aim to maximize economic benefits to local communities by building projects collaboratively, offering high standard technical training and long-term job opportunities. Our vision is to reduce the barriers between technology and people, which we'll be further discussing in the next slides. Next slide, please. So I want to present you with a case study that we did in 2022 in Indian Creek, Toledo, Belize. So a little bit of background on Indian Creek, Toledo. It is one of the 3 Mayan villages in the Toledo district, and they have been without electricity for the last 30 years. The community often face blackouts, leaving their families in darkness, children struggling to do their homework, and households unable to refrigerate their food. So if you can see here on the images, we have an image of the community largely supported by women. In the previous presentations, we heard about how important it is to support women in these communities, as well as the children. So as you probably already know, women and children are the most vulnerable within these communities and require most intensive energy. Next slide, please. So our solution was What Up Belize. So fun fact, what up means what's up. So you'd realize in the different Caribbean countries, we have different slangs. So the slang is what up. And we provided the first solar hybrid plant and microgrid in Belize. Important to note is the project was managed by Mazda and sponsored by Abu Dhabi Fund for Development and the government of Belize under the UAE Caribbean Renewable Energy Fund. We were able to provide 400 kilowatt hour of solar as well as 660 kilowatt hour of backup of storage, as well as gasoline backup of 230. The construction was used 70% of the local force, providing incomes for the families, and is currently run by 100% of the local force. It was able to save 430 tons of CO2 per year and 1,700,000 liters of diesel per year. The application was microgrid. So the homes in this area require about 1 megawatt of electricity every year. So this project was able to provide electricity to 150 homes within the community, as well as 200 homes in the area. So we were able to not only increase their livelihoods, because it was able to electrify homes, schools, clinics, so they now have clean access to water as well for the because it fuels the pumping facilities and also tourist attractions. Next slide, please. Another project I'd like to talk about. While this project is for the utility, it provides it stabilizes Dominica grid by installing a battery storage. The main thing I want to point out is that we train the DOMLEC, which is the utility. We train the utility on how to efficiently operate and manage the system. So that not only reduces the need for people to come in and operate the system, but also empowers the local community within the area with the knowledge that they need to keep their systems up and running. Another case study I'd like to discuss, not on this slide, is that we were able to provide electricity for the entirety of Antigua and Barbuda via a hybrid solar project. And within this as well, we were able to train and provide sessions for persons on how to operate and manage the system. So at Smart Energy, the major things that empower communities is by providing electricity to rural communities, as in Toledo, as well as providing training and support for persons within the communities so that they could support their own, so they could support the work that we come in and do. Next slide, please. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I hope you guys have a great day.
Great, thank you very much, Aashrita, for this presentation. More focused on the community engagement side of things, but also really interesting and really appreciated. Okay, that was the last presentation of the day. So may I invite all the speakers to turn on your cameras so we can enter into the final Q&A audience session. Also, dear audience, this is your last chance to ask as many questions as you want, so we can redirect them to the speakers today. Hi, Shantha. Hi, Jod. Aashrita. Adekoyejo. Nice. Okay, I will try to follow the same order of the presentations, but not necessarily. So yeah, we can start with you, Jad. I have a couple of questions for you by the audience. The first one says, any solutions that Asantys has implemented integrating mini-grids? And also, where else in Africa have you implemented your projects? Thank you.
Hi, thanks for the question. Yeah, I mean, our pure solutions are mainly to address the excess energy that mini-grids have, to allow the operators to benefit of all the available energy and also business enhancement for the people who are connected to those ones. Those ones are already integrated in like any village electrification. We have already enrolled over 170 projects in Senegal out of the Azer 300 project, where those mini grids now can integrate also these pure solutions. I mean, this is our biggest rollout in Senegal since 2020, now coming to the last phase. And yeah, mostly, as you have seen from the presentation, we have projects mainly all over Africa. Whereas, I mean, Senegal, West or East Africa, we have affiliates in Senegal already, and now we have already affiliates with East Africa, Asantys East Africa, our latest team there, taking over all the project development on the East African region.
Thanks, Dad. Yeah, I feel the question is really well answered. There's a second one for you, actually. I will ask you that one as well. It says, it's a question regarding the electrification of pirogues in Senegal. What would it take to scale up? And also if you need any financing needs.
Yeah, thanks for the question again. It's an interesting one. This project we had is a pilot project. To scale it up, of course, many factors are involved. First of all, technical adaptation. Well, many technicals and learnings are still during this pilot project phase. It's just to see where it must be enhanced in terms of, I mean, it's, I mean, local people are using those pirogues, and you will always learn from using them daily, testing them, and how to adapt them to their needs. For example, adapting their operation time. Based on that, you can know either during the night or during the day where you want to where you want to enhance or you want to focus. So this is the technical adaptation, but also infrastructure which is needed. So I mean, basically this is as I said, a solar rooftop charging directly. The battery is 36 kilowatt hour of the HE pirogue, but also if you're doing longer travels, for example, for either food transportation, people transportation, whatsoever. Just talking in general now also. This is where, for example, charging stations, the ones that I mentioned, these are all could directly charge what you have used during the day. You can charge them at night or vice versa. So this is also on. But most importantly, the training and capacity building. This is where usually, I mean, we don't own those pirogues. It's a collaboration, as I said. And this is where the training capacity of the people who are using those pirogues, and then it could scale up by just seeing that their local adaptations are met, and yeah, just the overall feeling that you get to it. And of course, policy supports engagement into more supporting these kind of innovations, just to rely less and less on fuel, which is environmental and yeah, even noise reduction, I would say. Financial needs, of course, yeah, I mean, transitioning to electric is also an investment. Of course, it needs more adaptation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jad, for answering both questions at the same time. Okay, now we can move to you, Tam. There's a question for you, actually, regarding the bundled energy bucket securities that you mentioned, BEBS. The question is, how do these BEBS work in practice? And how do you improve liquidity compared to traditional financing models in the DRE sector or decentralized energy projects?
That's a great question, and currently we're still developing that, and we're working with the right partners to figure out how it work practically, because it's still fairly a new way of financing projects. Although it's still not very different from how you, for example, finance mortgages when you have mortgage-backed securities and things like that. The way that I would say it's different from the traditional way of financing project currently is the fact that instead of having your capital tied up in a project, you're making that returns over time, especially when we talk about large energy assets. So the systems that are within the 10 kilowatt and above type systems, either mini grids or utility scale, instead of having that sort of kind of tied to a PPA or tied to an exclusive agreement with the community or tied to the revenues you're making, you can already sell that project off just based on by securitizing the assets essentially, and you can get that cash up front and use that to roll over on other projects. And as you do this more and more and more, the value of the projects and the reputation of developer improves and kind of increases the value of the securities over time. Right now, I would understand that, of course, there will be some risk attached to it. So it would be possible to sell, for example, like an 80 cents on the dollar if you securitize large assets, and that's largely because it's too new. But it would be a fairly different way currently, but not different in the grand scheme of things with respect to capital markets. So the short answer is we're still developing that and working with our partners, our financial advisors, to think through what it would look like in practice, and hopefully trying to find the right set of portfolio to combine to make it work, because something like this, you would have to hit it right the first time. And if it works, then it would just be easy to scale across multiple different kinds of asset configurations over time.
Thank you for the clarification, Tam. I think it's really clear now. So yeah, thank you very much. Okay, we can go for a question for KAMIM, for you, Adekoyejo. It's a person who would like to understand how these projects or technologies actually help the people at the base of the pyramid, the people with really low income, and if this project can enable them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that's actually the importance of putting these kind of technologies at the farm gates, because you really want to, there's that affordability problem, right? So I think this will go into the business model. So rather than just, we're not providing these solutions so you come and buy them. So we're offering services. So for example, if you're a small scale farmer, you just have about let's say 5 kg, 10 kg of produce you want to store. You just pay for that cooling service, basically. So we're charging them based on services, and they will end up making money from this at the end of the day. So it's a win-win situation. If you make money as a smallholder farmers, you'll be able to patronize us. And also, if people that are buying your product are now seeing the difference in quality of the product based on the cooling, they will come back for like, okay, we want to patronize from this farmer because the product is, because you definitely see the difference between products that are cooled at the first mile and products that don't go through the cooling solutions. So we are providing affordable services, so they just pay for the cooling services. That way, they don't have to uptake the upfront capital. So, and also to finance this sort of project, we use like a blended approach. So for like the Eco Farm Link, the SOCO project I shared, it's a blended finance. So it was both grant and private capital. So that way the grant aspect will help us direct some like the early stage aspect of, because obviously you get your money back, but you know, you're working with rural communities. So you need patient financiers at this stage. So that's where the grants play a part. So that way to enable us, you know, offer very affordable services, and they can also make money from this. Yeah, and the ops are commercialized, so it's not like we're offering free service. You pay for the services. That will have effect on your business. Everybody makes money. Everybody's happy. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
It does. Thank you. And there's another one interesting that says it's about farmer adoption. What has been the biggest barrier to convincing smallholder farmers to invest in solar cooling services, and how have you addressed it?
Yeah, the adoption is more like at the farm gate level, is about usage, especially when it comes to vegetables. You know, typically when you hear of cold rooms in this part of the world, what people assume we use cold room for is to store like the livestock produce, the fish, the meat. But if you're not talking about for vegetables, for tomatoes, for leafy vegetables, it's something that is quite new. So there's still a bit of customer education to teach them that if you pre-cool or you cool at the first mile, there's an added value to your produce. There's an added shelf life to your produce. So that is still ongoing. But it's a continuous work. You have to educate your customers. Also, there is a need for a lot of community engagement before you even come to this location. So the adoption is something you have to start before you even go to this location. Then even if you're there, you need to continue engaging with the community, with the farmers. You need to do a lot of training. And also we work with local players. So as a tech company, we just don't go to farms. We work with like the local aggregators. We work with the local cooperatives that they are familiar with. So this also helps us to drive with the usage and adoption as well.
Nice. Thank you very much, Adekoyejo, for answering the question. Okay, we can go to Shantha. There's an interesting question that says, what type of incentives do you receive from local authorities, like tax rebate, charging, station site, purchase discounts, ease of service, advertising, etc.? Thank you.
So I think it's been said, I mean, I think we were a newcomer. E-mobility is very, very young in the continent. When I started, I mean, there was very little awareness about what we were trying to do. So we started on a small scale, obviously. And we worked actually as a consultant team on the e-mobility strategy in ZIM, which has not yet been adopted, which is frustrating. I think it's a challenge across the continent. You know, some countries have adopted and moved, and we see a lot of flurry of activity in e-mobility in obviously East Africa, where there's, you know, a lot of uptake of motorbikes, and it's very focused on urban. I think what I've learned on the journey is that, you know, in terms of transport, rules are different across countries depending on their cultural legacy. I live in a former settler colony, so transport's very regulated and controlled. So it's meant a lot of engagement with local authorities to understand what we're doing. Because obviously for women especially, there is a reason that they're not usually in the driver's seat. So we've had to be very deliberate about how we try and change cultural attitudes and also give them the skills to be able to drive. And on the regulatory front, we're in the process of, there was no rules, but we're in the process of working for a rule that classifies tricycles, but distinct from a motorbike. In terms of community engagement and local authorities, we've had great support from the communities. I think everyone realises that this can have huge economic benefits to rural areas. The communities where we're working in, we have support from local councillors, the MPs, women's associations and others, as well as agribusiness. I think the challenge has been that structurally, it's very difficult for governments to, a lot of governments don't really have good policies towards startups. And Zim, we've been very isolated from this ecosystem, so it's not something that's common. And obviously, I think most African governments are busy trying to find tax revenue. So we haven't had any rebates, but we don't have to, well, I should actually qualify that. We don't pay import duty on any renewable energy products. We pay VAT. And we actually did succeed. The Minister of Finance issued a statutory instrument, and we have the first registered e-tricycle factory in Zim, which meant, because under the rules they had exemptions for two-wheelers and four-wheelers that were being locally assembled, but nothing for three-wheelers. So it meant we were facing big import duties. So we successfully have got a rule now that says that tricycles are considered import duty free, and we still have to pay VAT, but that was a huge coup. So I think, I mean, it's a bit like Adekoyejo speaking about community engagement. I think the thing is, if we want to really be serious about building the green economy in the continent, we need to realise that it's new, and that means we need to work on the policy front, we need to work with communities, and we need the type of capital that thinks long term. We have potentially a massive market. You know, we are a continent of 1.34 billion people. We're predominantly rural and agro-based, but often I think, unfortunately, financiers are very short term in their attitudes, and they want to pay back within 3 to 5 or 7 years. I mean, and they want high returns. So I think that's just to tag that on. It's good to hear Emmanuel saying he's had success, because I think the challenge in Africa is financing, and if we don't find the right financing, we won't move as quickly to the green transition. So we have a lot to do. When you have to do a lot as a startup. You can't just pretend that the ecosystem exists to support you.
Yeah, we invested in Zimbabwe too, so it's great country.
Come and join, come and invest.
Thank you, Shantha, for sharing your vision with us. It's really, really interesting. Really appreciate it. Okay, Emmanuel, there's also questions for you. There's a person interested in knowing if you have any backing from donors, philanthropic organizations, or other public funders, or are your funds at On.Capital backed purely by commercial investors? Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So for it's over, let's say, the past 15 years, it's been different types of investor groups. So at Schneider Electric Energy Access Ventures, it was mostly Schneider as well as the Employee Savings Plan. Then with Energy Access Ventures, it was also Schneider Electric, but with mostly DFIs. So we had OFID, which comes from the OPEC, EIB, BI, FMO, and the French Development Agency and Proparco. Now, let's say the new group of investors we're talking with for the energy go-getters is private investors, which is refreshing, African private investors, philanthropic groups, and DFIs. So it's a mixture.
Thanks a lot, Emmanuel. Now I would like to ask a question to Aashrita. A person of the audience wanted to know what are the Latin America and Caribbean countries that the smart energy have experience with, especially with rural communities.
So smart energy has experience. We currently working on a project here in Trinidad. I'm from Trinidad and Tobago. We also worked in Antigua and Barbuda, but most of the projects we work on are small scale on the grid. The Caribbean islands, if you notice, are quite small relative to African countries. So to say rural is most of the communities are on the grid. So it'll be hard to say for rural communities. But we have experience in, as I mentioned before, Belize, in Dominica, Antigua and Barbuda, and that's about the core ones.
Thanks a lot, Aashrita. I think there's time enough for one more question, but please try to be brief. It's for you, Emmanuel, as well. What lessons from the current pay-go OGS sector crisis are you incorporating into your new fund strategy to avoid investing in overly indebted companies? Thank you.
Thanks. Well, it's not an easy question, and I think one of the slides I had to skip really quick was showing how much time we spend into understanding how to place our investments within one particular segment, right? So it's really about anticipation of the market. Where do we believe there's going to be a good offtake, let's say in the demand for particular assets that are being developed, and then who are the potential buyers and how much would they want to pay if they are interested at all. So if you take mobility, right, like let's say Shantha's business as an example, right, like most likely the big oil companies at some point are going to say, okay, wow, that's my cake. Okay, so it used to be the small lanterns and petrol that used to go for those lanterns that we try to capture, right? So it's really about like positioning yourself at the crossroad of a big value allocation shift. And then as an equity investor, it's very different than the debt mindset, right? So I think in the sector, many investors did bad investments, and it's great if they lose money. I'm so sorry to say that, but investment is about losing and winning. So if you win all the time, maybe you didn't take enough risk, and if you lose a lot of money, maybe you did a crappy job. But fundamentally, the essential fundamentals are there. We're replacing kerosene and oil. So if somebody can tell me how did the oil companies lose money, I'm happy to have that discussion. I really think if you look carefully at the fundamentals, do you have a big market? Do you have a unique solution, meaning not everybody can come and compete because then you commoditize margins? And then do you have a stellar team? And then the rest of the probabilities are against us. We're in the worst geographies. We're trying to fight too many things. People want money back, fighting climate change, reducing poverty. Shantha wants to help women. I still like men as much as I like women. So we all want different things, right? And I think we need to align on what we care most about. Most likely nowadays, peace is most important to DFIs, and they're not interested to put money in rural electrification in Africa as much as before. And so that tap has closed. And I think if you anticipate, you know, let's say the reduction in money available, then you can also look at, are those businesses able to thrive with good, simple fundamentals?
Thank you very much for this final question. Ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of this webinar. First of all, I would like to extend our thanks to all these fabulous panel of speakers from the A4E community. Thank you very much for being with us today and for participating in this I4E webinar. It's been really interesting, and I feel that the audience have enjoyed a lot your presentations. Also, dear audience, thank you very much for registering and being with us today, for your patient hearing, and also for your questions. We will share all the questions with the speakers, so no worries. It will include your contact information so they can reach out to you if they wish. And finally, thank you to all the ARE team. Actually, we would like to extend our invitation to meet us in person next April at the Energy Access Investment Forum 2025 that ARE is organizing. It will take place from 8 to 10 of April in Kampala, Uganda. And good news, there's a special discount for all the I4E listeners. You can see the code EIF20 welcome that will provide you with a 20% discount for the tickets for the EIF. So looking forward to seeing you there, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you very much, all of you. Also, see you at the next I4E Showcase webinar, 26th of June. Thank you.